CodeTheGlobe here, and welcome back to the second set of problem solving on coding back. So today we are going to solve parrot trouble, makes 10, near 100 and positive negative. First let's start off with parrot trouble. We have a loud talking parrot. The hour parameter is the current hour time in the range 0 and 23, 0 and 23 inclusive. We are in trouble if the parrot is talking and the hour is before 7 or after 20. Return true if we are in trouble. Okay, so to make this short, we can interpret this as we are in trouble if talking is true and the hour is before 7 or after 20. So we have two different conditionals. If those two conditionals are met, we are in trouble. So if talking is true and hour, let's just keep this in parentheses, say, noting that that's different from talking, and hour is less than 7 or hour is greater than 20, then we are in trouble. So we need to return true. Then anything else we return false, saying that we're not in trouble. Okay, we got them all right. So now we have one thing to talk about. We can make this code even shorter. How do we do that? So in my previous video I said that talking we can just backspace equals true, because talking is a boolean, and then if if you write if talking, that is it, Python takes that as if talking is true. For example, let me just open my IDE and then let's say n is true. Now if I just say n, the value is stored as true, but then if I say not n, the value is false. So instead of saying n equals true or n equals false, we can just write n or not n. That makes our life much easier. And hour is greater. Okay, so if hour is less than 7 or hour is greater than 20, that's right, then we need to return true. For we can actually take our else here, and we can just clear the indentation right there. This states that first try this conditional, and if that's not met, we move on and then we return false, because return is different from print. So once it's returned, we cannot print on the screen once more. So for example, in this code, if we say return true, if the conditional is met, the Python returns the outputs the output will be true, and then returns function is met, we cannot return again. But if instead of return, in place of return, if we have print, if that was the case, and then print here, Python would have two values printed. One is if the conditional is met, Python would print true, and after running that we would print false. So we do not need that. So for if you're using return, it is easier to write it like this. It saves us a lot of time. So now let me just try running the code now. Okay, we got them all right. Now let's move on to the next. Makes 10. Given two integers a and b, return true if one of them is 10 or if their sum is 10. So we return true if a is 10 or b is 10, or if a plus b is 10. So if a equals 10 or b equals 10 or a plus b equals 10, we return true, and anything else we return false. Perfect, we got them all right. Moving on to the next one now. Near 100. Given an integer n, return true if it is within 10 of 100 or 200. Note ABS, which stands for absolute value. ABS num computes the absolute value of a number. Okay, so one thing here is we need to think about one thing over here. If we have our number as 110, then that is within 10 of 100 too, except we need to subtract 100. But if it's 90, we need to add 100, but it's still within 10 of 100. So that is the reason we use absolute value. We subtract these numbers from 100. 100 minus 90 is 10, so we can know that it's within 10. But 100 minus 110 is negative 10. And Python doesn't accept that if we just write the conditional as less than or equal to 10. So we need the absolute value to compute the result. So we have our number as n. Then let's see, if ABS, that's absolute value, 100 minus n is less than or equal to 10, we return true, and then anything else we return false. But then within over here it says return true if it is within 10 of 100 or 200. So over there we have two conditionals, or ABS 200 minus n is less than or equal to 10. Let me just keep this in parentheses so it's not confusing for Python. Okay, now let's try run the code. Then we got them all right. Good job. Moving on to the next one. The next one's positive negatives. Return true if one is negative and one is positive. Except if the parameter negative is true, then return true only if both are negative. So we have two integers a and b, and the parameter negative. So negative can either be true or false. If negative is true, we need to return true only if a and b, both of them are negative integers. But then if negative is given as false, then one has to be negative and one has to be positive. If that's the case, we return true, and then anything else, we just return false. So if negative, that is if negative is true and a is less than 0 and b is less than 0, we return true. Then else if not negative, that is if negative is false and a is less than 0 and b is greater than or equal to 0, or b is less than 0 and a is greater than or equals 0. Over here, let me just put the parentheses. Okay, so what I'm stating over here is this a is negative and b is positive. So if a is negative and b is positive, or if b is negative and a is positive, we return true. That is only if the parameter negative is false. Then anything else we just return false straight up. Okay, so we got them all right. So that's it for today's episode. Thank you for watching. CodeTheGlobe out.